Centralia. Centralia is located in Columbia County in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. Founded in 1866, it was once a bustling coal mining town. By the 1890s, Centralia had a population of over 2,700 residents, thriving with businesses, churches, and schools, all sustained by the rich deposits of anthracite coal beneath the town. The story of Centralia took a dramatic turn in 1962. That year, a seemingly small event led to a disaster that would change the town forever. It all started with a landfill fire intended to clean up the town's waste. The fire was set in an abandoned strip mine pit near the Oddfellows Cemetery. But it wasn't fully extinguished. The fire ignited a vein of coal, and what seemed like a minor oversight quickly turned into an uncontrollable underground inferno. Just imagine the entire underground beneath your town is burning. Efforts to put out the fire began immediately. Volunteers and state officials poured water and excavated trenches in attempts to contain the blaze. However, these efforts failed. The fire spread through the labyrinth of coal seams beneath Centralia, feeding on the extensive network of anthracite coal deposits. By the late 1970s, the effects of the underground fire became impossible to ignore. Residents reported smoke and steam billowing from the ground, and the smell of sulfur became a constant presence. The ground was literally steaming and grew hot to the touch in certain areas. Dangerous levels of carbon monoxide were detected, raising significant health and safety concerns. In 1981, a dramatic incident underscored the severity of the situation. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski fell into a sudden sinkhole that opened in his grandmother's backyard. The hole, deep and exposed a lethal mix of hot steam and carbon monoxide. Fortunately, Todd was rescued, but the incident drew national attention and highlighted the urgent need for action. By 1983, the federal government intervened. Congress allocated $42 million for relocation efforts, offering residents buyouts to move away from the increasingly uninhabitable town. Over the next few years, most of Centralia's residents accepted the buyouts and left. Homes were demolished, and the once thriving town began to resemble a post-apocalyptic landscape. Despite these efforts, a handful of residents chose to stay, unwilling to leave their homes and community behind. Legal battles ensued, and in 1992, the state of Pennsylvania declared eminent domain over all properties in Centralia, condemning the remaining houses. A few holdouts continued to resist, and as of 2020, fewer than a dozen residents remain, living in a town where time seems to have stood still. Today, Centralia is marked by empty streets, overgrown lots, and the occasional foundation where homes once stood. The most striking feature is the continuing underground fire, which experts believe could burn for another 250 years. The area around the old town is hazardous, with smoke and steam vents still visible, and the ground unstable in many areas. Centralia's story has captured the public's imagination, inspiring books, documentaries, and even movies. The town served as a loose inspiration for the 2006 horror film Silent Hill, which depicted a similarly eerie, abandoned town shrouded in mist and mystery. Centralia was a product of the coal mining boom, a time when communities sprang up around rich, natural resources. The very coal that brought prosperity ultimately led to the town's downfall. Orador Surlan. Orador Surlan is located in the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region in west-central France. Before World War II, it was a quiet, picturesque village, home to around 650 residents who led peaceful lives. The village's tranquility was shattered on June 10, 1944, just days after the D-Day landings in Normandy. On that fateful day, a unit of the Waffen-SS, the armed wing of the Nazi Party's SS organization, entered Orador Surlan. The 2nd SS Panzer Division des Reich was notorious for its ruthless tactics, and the events at Orador Surlan are a testament to the indiscriminate violence inflicted by the Nazis. The unit was under orders to quell any resistance activities as they moved north towards the front lines in Normandy. There are various theories about why Orador Surlan was targeted. Some suggest it was a case of mistaken identity, as the SS might have intended to attack another village named Orador Surveyor. Others believe it was a retaliatory act against the French resistance. Upon entering the village, the SS rounded up all the inhabitants under the pretense of checking their identity papers. They separated the men from the women and children, leading the men to several barns while confining the women and children in the local church. What followed was a brutal massacre that has left an indelible mark on history. The men were shot, and their bodies were set on fire. Meanwhile, the women and children trapped in the church were subjected to a horrific fate. The SS set off an incendiary device inside the church, causing a fire that engulfed the building. Those who tried to escape were met with gunfire. By the end of the massacre, 642 villagers, including 247 women, were dead. Only a handful of residents managed to survive, either by escaping or by being mistaken for dead. The SS then looted the village and set the buildings on fire, leaving Orador Surlan in ruins. In the days following the massacre, the charred remains of the village and its inhabitants were discovered by members of the French resistance and Allied forces. The sight was horrific, with the village reduced to smoldering ruins and bodies lying where they fell. After the war, the French government decided to preserve the village in its ruined state as a permanent memorial and museum. President Charles de Gaulle decreed that Orador Surlan would remain untouched as a reminder of the atrocities committed and as a symbol of the suffering endured by innocent civilians during the war. Today, visitors to Orador Surlan can walk through the ruins of the village. The charred buildings, rusted cars, and remnants of daily life left behind offer a poignant and sobering experience. The memorial center at the entrance provides historical context and personal stories of the victims, helping visitors understand the magnitude of the tragedy. One of the most striking sights is the village church, where the women and children perished. The burned-out shell of the church stands as a powerful symbol of the brutality inflicted upon the innocent. Inside, you can still see the remains of a baby carriage, a haunting reminder of the young lives lost in the massacre. In the post-war years, several members of the SS unit were brought to trial. In 1953, a military tribunal in Bordeaux convicted 21 former members of the unit. However, the sentences were met with controversy, and some were later commuted, sparking outrage among the survivors and the families of the victims. The village's preservation serves as a historical record, ensuring that future generations remember the horrors of the past and strive to prevent such atrocities from happening again. Sanji Resort. Located in the district of Sanji in New Taipei City, Taiwan, the Sanji Resort was conceived as a futuristic vacation retreat. The project began in 1978 with the vision of creating a luxurious escape for affluent tourists. The resort was designed with a series of pod-like structures reminiscent of UFOs or space-age domiciles, intended to offer a unique and modern experience for visitors. However, what was meant to be a symbol of modernity and leisure quickly turned into a ghost town, and a subject of local law. The construction of Sanji Resort was fraught with numerous difficulties from the start. Financial problems plagued the development, but the real trouble began with a series of tragic accidents. Reports of fatal accidents among construction workers started to surface, causing widespread fear and superstition among the workforce. The number of deaths was alarmingly high, leading many to believe that the site was cursed. According to local legends, the land on which the resort was built was once a burial ground or a site of significant historical conflict. Some stories suggest that it was the scene of a Dutch mass grave from the colonial period. These tales, although unverified, fueled the belief that the resort was haunted by restless spirits. The disturbing nature of these stories only added to the growing unease and reluctance to continue the project. As accidents continued to occur, rumors of paranormal activity began to spread. Workers reported strange occurrences, such as unexplained noises, ghostly apparitions, and tools moving on their own. These eerie experiences contributed to the perception that the site was haunted. The combination of financial difficulties, tragic accidents, and growing superstitions eventually led to the halt of construction in the early 1980s. The resort was never completed, and the partially built structures were left to decay. The abandoned Sanji Resort quickly became a hotspot for urban explorers and thrill seekers. The futuristic pods, now overgrown with vegetation and showing signs of decay, created an eerie and surreal landscape. One could almost believe that he stumbled upon a crash site of ancient UFOs. Despite its abandoned state, the Sanji Resort has continued to captivate the imagination of locals and visitors alike. The tales of hauntings and the tragic history of the resort have made it a popular subject of ghost stories and urban legends. Some people believe that the spirits of those who died during construction still roam the area, unable to find peace. Others think that the resort is cursed and that anyone who tries to revive the project will meet a similar fate. In addition to the local legends, there are also theories about why the project failed. Some believe that the design of the resort itself was flawed, and that the pod-like structures were inherently unsafe. Others think that the project's ambitious scope and high costs were simply too much for the developers to manage. Regardless of the reasons, the Sanji Resort remains a testament to a grand vision that ended in failure and mystery. In recent years, there have been discussions about redeveloping the site. However, the haunting reputation and the logistical challenges of such a project have made progress slow. Many people in the local community are opposed to redevelopment, fearing that disturbing the site could awaken whatever dark forces are believed to reside there. Bitzhein. Bitzhein is a former sanatorium complex situated about 50 kilometers southwest of Berlin. A vast and eerie complex located in the woods of Belitz, Germany. Built between 1898 and 1930, it was originally designed as a tuberculosis sanatorium by the Berlin Workers' Health Insurance Corporation. The complex covers approximately 200 hectares and comprises around 60 buildings, including hospital wards, power station, and staff housing. The serene setting, surrounded by dense forests, belies the dark and often tragic history contained within its walls. The early years of Bitzhein were marked by medical advancements and hope. Tuberculosis, a widespread and deadly disease at the time, required patients to have long-term care in well-ventilated environments. Bitzhein provided this with its airy, light-filled rooms and extensive grounds where patients could rest and recuperate. However, the peace and purpose of the sanatorium were short-lived. During World War I, the complex was converted into a military hospital for the Imperial German Army. One of its most infamous patients was a young soldier named Adolf Hitler, who was treated here after being wounded in the Battle of the Somme in 1916. Hitler's stay at Beelitz-Heilstätten has since added a sinister layer to the site's history. In the interwar period, Beelitz-Heilstätten returned to its role as a tuberculosis sanatorium, but its facilities were again repurposed for military use during World War II. The Nazi regime utilized the complex as a hospital for soldiers, and it became one of the largest military hospitals in Germany. The atrocities of the war left a lasting impact on the site, with many soldiers passing through its doors, some never to leave. As the war drew to a close and Berlin fell to the Allies, Beelitz-Heilstätten found itself under Soviet control. From 1945 until 1995, the complex served as a Soviet military hospital, the largest outside of the USSR. During this time, it treated high-ranking Soviet officials, including Erich Honecker, the leader of East Germany. The Cold War era left its mark on the site, with stories of secretive operations and human experiments. One of the most disturbing aspects of Beelitz-Heilstätten's history is its association with several horrific crimes. In the early 1990s, serial killer Wolfgang Schmidt, known as the Beast of Beelitz, terrorized the area. Schmidt committed multiple murders and assaults in the vicinity of the hospital complex, preying on women and children. His gruesome acts added a contemporary layer of horror to an already eerie site. After the Soviet withdrawal in 1995, Beelitz-Heilstätten was abandoned, leaving behind a decaying monument to its tumultuous past. The once grand buildings began to fall into disrepair, with nature slowly reclaiming the site. Vines crept through broken windows, and trees grew through the floors of deserted wards. The dilapidated buildings and desolate corridors of Beelitz-Heilstätten have become a magnet for urban explorers, ghost hunters, and filmmakers. The combination of its dark history, connection to infamous figures, and state of abandonment has given rise to numerous ghost stories and paranormal reports. Eastern State Penitentiary. Opened in 1829, the Eastern State Penitentiary was revolutionary for its time. Located on Fairmount Avenue, it was designed by John Havland and was the first true penitentiary in the world. A prison intended to inspire penitence or true regret in the hearts of its inmates. The prison's design reflected this mission with its innovative radial layout, a central hub with cell blocks radiating out like spokes on a wheel, allowing for easy surveillance. However, what truly set Eastern State Penitentiary apart was its harsh system of solitary confinement. Inmates were kept in small, single-person cells with skylights referred to as the Eye of God, to remind them that they were always being watched. Prisoners were hooded whenever they left their cells, ensuring complete isolation and anonymity. This method was intended to encourage reflection and repentance, but often led to severe psychological distress. The cells themselves were stark and austere. Each contained a single bed, a toilet, and a Bible. Inmates spent 23 hours a day in their cells, only allowed out for 1 hour of solitary exercise, in a small walled yard attached to their cell. This extreme isolation led to numerous accounts of mental breakdowns and unalivings. The prison's regime was so severe that Charles Dickens, who visited in 1842, wrote, "The system is rigid, strict, and hopeless solitary confinement, and I believe it in its effects to be cruel and wrong." Eastern State Penitentiary housed some of America's most infamous criminals. Among them was Al Capone. the notorious gangster who served time here in 1929. Unlike most inmates, Capone's cell was lavishly furnished with rugs, fine furniture, and even a radio, reflecting his influence and wealth. Another famous inmate was bank robber Willie Sutton, who attempted a daring escape in 1945 by digging a tunnel over 100 feet long. The prison's conditions only worsened over time. By the early 20th century, the solitary confinement system had been largely abandoned due to overcrowding, but the prison remained a place of extreme suffering. Reports of brutal treatment by guards, including beatings, starvation, and other forms of torture, became common. One infamous punishment was the iron gag, where an inmate's tongue was clamped and chained to their wrists, leading to excruciating pain if they moved. As the prison aged, it became increasingly dilapidated. By the mid-20th century, the eastern state was overcrowded and understaffed, with conditions deteriorating further. In 1971, after 142 years of operation, the prison was finally closed. It sat abandoned for years, its crumbling walls and decaying cells a stark reminder of its dark history. One of the most famous ghost stories is that of Cell Block 12, where visitors and staff have reported hearing disembodied voices, eerie laughter, and footsteps. Another hotspot for paranormal activity is Death Row, where shadows are said to move on their own, and strange noises are frequently heard. The penitentiary's long history of pain and suffering has left an indelible mark, making it a focal point for those interested in the supernatural. Today, Eastern State Penitentiary is a National Historic Landmark and a museum open to the public. Visitors can explore the haunting ruins and hear the chilling stories of those who were incarcerated within its walls. Hashima Island. Hashima Island is located off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, in the East China Sea. The island, now uninhabited, is a mere 16 acres in size and lies about 15 kilometers or 9 miles from Nagasaki. Its unique silhouette, resembling a battleship, earned it the nickname Gunkanjima, Gunkan meaning battleship. The island's history dates back to the early 19th century when coal was discovered beneath its rocky surface. In 1887, Mitsubishi Corporation purchased the island and began mining operations. This marked the beginning of Hashima's rapid development and transformation into a bustling coal mining facility. To accommodate the growing number of workers, Mitsubishi embarked on an ambitious construction project. The company built Japan's first large, reinforced concrete building in 1916, designed to withstand typhoons and harsh sea conditions. This marked the start of Hashima's transformation into a densely populated urban settlement. At its peak in the 1950s, Hashima Island was home to over 5,000 residents, making it one of the most densely populated places on Earth. The island boasted a self-sufficient community with multi-story apartment complexes, schools, a hospital, a movie theater, and shops. Despite its isolated location, the residents enjoyed modern amenities such as electricity, running water, and sewage systems. However, it wasn't all fun, and life on Hashima was unique and challenging. The confined space and harsh working conditions created a tightly knit community. Miners worked long hours in dangerous conditions, descending into the labyrinthine coal mines deep beneath the sea. The miners' families, including women and children, lived in cramped quarters, creating a vibrant but crowded society. Hashima's prosperity was closely tied to Japan's industrialization and post-war economic boom. Coal from Hashima fueled Japan's growing industries, including steel production and shipbuilding. However, the 1960s brought significant changes to Japan's energy policies. The The country began shifting from coal to petroleum as its primary energy source. This transition marked the beginning of Hashima's decline. In 1974, after nearly a century of operation, Mitsubishi officially closed the mine. The residents were given just a few weeks to leave the island, and Hashima was abandoned almost overnight. Buildings, personal belongings, and infrastructure were left to decay, creating an eerie, ghostly landscape. For decades, Hashima Island remained off-limits to the public. The once thriving community became a haunting relic of Japan's industrial past. Nature began reclaiming the island, with vegetation slowly creeping over the concrete ruins. In the early 2000s, interest in Hashima's history and its potential as a tourist destination grew. The Japanese government and private organizations undertook efforts to preserve the island's remnants. In 2009, the island was partially reopened to tourists, allowing visitors to explore designated areas and witness the island's haunting beauty firsthand. Hashima's historical significance was further recognized in 2015 when it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site as part of the sites of Japan's Meiji Industrial Revolution. This acknowledgement highlighted Hashima's role in Japan's rapid industrialization and its contribution to the country's modernization. However, Hashima's history also carries darker chapters. During World War II, the island was used as a site for forced labor. Korean and Chinese laborers, as well as prisoners of war, were brought to Hashima to work under brutal conditions. The forced laborers endured harsh treatment, inadequate food, and dangerous working environments. This painful legacy adds a somber layer to the island's history. Today, Hashima Island stands as a stark contrast to its former self. Walking through the ruins, one can almost hear the echoes of the past, the clatter of machinery, the laughter of children, and the daily life of a bygone era.